to the population what happens when a civil claim is filed so that they can understand what happened in this case with Mr. Rowley as the defendant and Mr. Ramlogan as the claimant. When a civil claim is filed in the High Court, there is a limited time for the defendant to file a defense. Mr. Ramlogan, the claimant, filed a libel suit against Dr. Rowley, the defendant. Dr. Rowley applied for an extension of time to deliver his defense, and the court gave a deadline date of the 7th of January 2015 for that defense to be filed. Now let me stop here a minute. When it is stated that the court gave an extension of time, on many occasions when the court grants an extension of time, it does not grant it with a hearing. It grants it on paper. So you will have an application made to the judge on paper. The other side will say whether it objects or it does not object. And the court can, in its chambers, in the absence of the parties, grant the extension of time. In this particular case, it was done in that way. So the parties and the lawyers were not before the court when that extension of time was granted. What happened is when the court grants the extension of time, the administrative staff of the court of judiciary has a duty to inform both sides of the date of that decision. So the administrative staff would, in this case, on normal practice and procedure, inform both Mr. Ramlogan's lawyer and inform both Dr. Rowley's lawyers. Not the litigants, because the litigants, in the case of Dr. Rowley and Mr. Ramlogan, were represented by lawyers. What happened in this case, however, is that Dr. Rowley or his lawyer was not notified by the court registry of the extension of time granted the 7th of January 2015 for Dr. Rowley to file his defense. Since he was not notified, he did not know, he and his lawyer did not know of the time, of the extended time. As a matter of fact, they would have thought that the judge was still considering the matter. But Mr. Ramlogan and his lawyer knew of the extended time. So when the time passed, what happened is Mr. Ramlogan and his lawyer decided to take up what is called a default judgment. Now, let me explain that too. The way Mr. Ramlogan made his statement, it gave the impression to the public that the judge gave that judgment. The judge did not give that judgment. A default judgment is taken over the counter. That is to say, the defendant lawyers or the clerk would go to the court, the administrative officers of the court would check to see whether a defense is entered, and if a defense is not entered and everything is okay, then a judgment is entered. The judge had nothing to do with this judgment. He did not pronounce a judgment, he did not give a judgment. It was an administrative judgment given. It is called a default judgment. And I think this is important because I think that the way Mr. Ramlogan made his press release, it gave the impression that he got a judgment given by a judge, approved by a judge, and therefore he wanted an apology from Mr. Rowley and he was asking for damages and he'll give it to charity. So it is important for the public to understand that. So this judgment was taken up, and then you had the question in which you now had the members of the public and the media and politicians talking about it. And I want to make it quite clear here, because I think it is fair to the court, to the judge. Justice Sifasad had nothing to do with this judgment. He had nothing to do with this aspect of the case. And if there are any implications or insinuations against him, it is most unfair. He had nothing to do with it. So, the registry, the important question which arises would be, for the public consumption, how did the registry, how did the court registry communicate with not only Mr. Ramlogan's lawyer, Mr. Jagai, but communicated with Mr. Ramlogan also, and did not communicate with Dr. Rowley, his lawyer? If it is the practice and the procedure that when someone is legally represented, you would not have the name of the litigant as part of the court record and his contact details, how was he contacted for this matter? And I think it's important for the public to know that, because right now there is a lot of speculation as to whether anyone contacted the registry. Mr. Ramlogan himself has a duty to explain to the public how did the court get his, if he's aware of, how did the court get his email address to email him and email his lawyer also. You see, this matter has caused a lot of public disquiet, and I do not think it is sufficient for the judiciary to give a report of the investigation conducted. I think it has an obligation to disclose from its investigations the circumstances under which Mr. Ramlogan's contact details were either part of the court files for him to be communicated with, or were obtained by the court registry in order for it to communicate with Mr. Ramlogan and give him the date of the deadline for Dr. Rowley to file his defense. What makes matters worse in this issue, in this case, is that a leading weekly newspaper has stated that the communication from the registry went to the personal email address of Mr. Anand Ramlogan. If that is correct, and the judiciary has a duty to make available this record to tell the country whether it was at the personal email address of Mr. Anand Ramlogan. And that is curious, because if it is that the court proceedings records have the personal email address of Mr. Ramlogan as contact details, then the question arises why it didn't have Dr. Rowley's personal email address or Dr. Rowley's address. Why it would have an address of the litigant when it's the practice that if you have lawyers, you do not have the litigant's contact details. So this is not a matter to leave pending. This is a matter which needs openness and transparency. The public, members of the public have a right to know. So I would like to make an appeal to the judiciary that it should disclose some of these matters, and if the investigations it conducted did not show these matters, it must say so. But it cannot leave these matters buried under the carpet. I think we must understand that when there is public disquiet about a matter, there is need for the public emotions and the public feelings to be appeased, and the public emotions and feelings and curiosity cannot be properly appeased in this matter unless it gets those explanations, unless they get those explanations.
No problem.
Now, it's not only the people are concerned about this matter. The litigant, Dr. Rowley himself, he has expressed publicly that he wants a full investigation.
Yeah, it's a loose.
And he has expressed publicly that he wants a police investigation.
Okay.
And what he has said, which is reasonable, is that if it is that there is interference, if there was interference, the public ought to know. And the public ought to know who were the people who interfered. Because if you have a proceeding in court and there is interference to pervert the course of justice, that is a criminal offense. So where we have a civil matters involving high office holders, the Attorney General and the leader of the opposition, I want to suggest we cannot bury these matters. We cannot bury these matters. We need to know. We need to know. And we are not going to stop talking unless we know. The final matter I want to speak about is the alleged request by the Attorney General to Mr. David West. Before I go into this matter, I want to say that the office of the Attorney General is a very important office under the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago. The holder of that office is the guardian of the public interest. That office holder is supposed to defend the Constitution and the law as any other minister, but he has added responsibilities to ensure that the government operates honestly and not corruptly, that the government does not misuse or abuse its powers. He has a duty to ensure that if he sees such actions, he must take action against it. I am telling you this because it is important for the office of the Attorney General not to have hanging over that office serious allegations of impropriety. Serious allegations which, if correct, can amount to criminal offenses. It is not in the public interest for that to happen, and it is not in the public interest for it to continue. And a Prime Minister has a responsibility under the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago to ensure that the government is not only honest, but it appears to be honest. And that the government is not prepared to remain in office at all costs, regardless of the extent to which public office is brought into disrepute. Trinidad and Tobago is adversely affected every day if the country is looked upon as a country in which anything can happen with the highest office holders. Standards of conduct in public life are very important, not only for the image, but for the soul of our nation. On the Sunday Express, Anika Gums wrote that Anand Ramlogan refused to confirm or deny an allegation that he, 6 days before David West was appointed director of the Police Complaints Authority, he asked him to withdraw his witness statement in a defamation lawsuit. That lawsuit was filed by Ramlogan against Mr. Rowley in respect of statements he made at a news conference on the 8th of November 2011. Yes, it was filed by Mr. Ramlogan against Mr. Rowley in respect of those statements. And those statements related to the ruling made by the High Court to question the extradition proceedings against Mr. Ferguson and Mr. Galbraith. It was alleged in the story that Mr. Ramlogan telephoned Mr. West and informed him that he was tipped to head the Police Complaints Authority to replace Gillian Lucky, who accepted a judgeship. At the time he made the call to Mr. West was already telephoned by the President for Mr. West to meet with the President regarding the appointment. Mr. West sought legal advice immediately after the telephone conversation. Mr. West did not accede to the request to withdraw his witness statement. In the witness statement itself, so we have two alleged